Okay, so we are going to go through 1.6 conditionals today. Your objectives are to write conditional statements and to also evaluate their truth value to see whether they're true or false. So a conditional is an if-then statement that says at the top of the page. A basic conditional would be like this one right here. If a person lives in Paris, then he or she lives in France. The antecedent of that, and that's the word we're going to use, the antecedent of that is a person lives in Paris. Notice the word if is not included in that. The consequent is that he or she lives in France. Okay, so that's your basic statement. Now we look at to see whether that is true or false. And we're going to call that statement false. Let's back up for a second. Because it doesn't specify that the person has to live in Paris, France. The person could live in another Paris, such as Paris, Illinois, or Paris, Texas. So an instance of that statement, and these are things you need to put in your notes again, is a specific case where both the antecedent and the consequent are true, such as a person that actually lives in Paris, France. The counterexample is a specific case in which the antecedent part is true. In other words, they do live in Paris, but the consequent is false. In other words, they live in a different Paris, such as Paris, Texas. So you're going to have to, as you look at conditionals, you have to kind of analyze, just look at them closely. Now, to tell whether a conditional is true or not, here's a couple of statements that you can look at and write down. For it to be true, it has to be true for every specific case. Every time the antecedent is true, the consequent must also be true. For a conditional to be proven false, all you need is one counterexample. One case where the antecedent is true, but the consequent part is false. Now when we write our conditionals, we're going to write them using this basic format. So, and I would write this down. If, and then some general category that you can't argue about, okay, a really basic general category is, and then your specific property that you have, and then the concluding property. So we're going to have statements such as this statement right here, all birds can fly. So that statement, we start with figuring out what a general category birds are under. I'm going to call that animals. So as I write this out, I'm going to say if an animal is a bird. Notice I took the word all out. I didn't write the word all in there. Then it can fly. So that's taking that statement, all birds can fly, and putting it into a conditional format. The general category is that it's an animal. The antecedent part is that it's a bird, and then it can fly is its consequent. So instances of that are specific cases where both parts are true. In other words, it's a bird and it can fly. So that would be like a robin or an eagle. A counterexample would be something that is a bird but cannot fly, such as a penguin or an ostrich. So because we can come up with at least one counterexample, this statement is false. So we wrote the conditional here, and then we analyzed it down here. Okay, that should be section 1.6.